Wanted, dead or alive, Ricky Joel. They better be careful. Console players take these things very seriously, as they should considering the years of neglect. Good news, however, the Fun Pimps just announced, or rather confirmed, that they are doing early work on the new console version. So whatever else you might think, they are working on it. At least that's what they're saying. Welcome back, friends! 7 Days to Die is coming to Game Pass, available on console and PC, and apparently cloud saves, as can be seen here from Microsoft. Or is it? The topic of today is console happenings, as in 7 Days to Die on console. It's a topic which is near and dear to a lot of players, and has caused considerable consternation and frustration among many who actually play or want to play 7 Days to Die on console. It's also a topic which sees a very high amount of fake news. I often get approached by people saying they heard some random YouTuber saying that the console port has been cancelled, it's coming out next month, or it's never gonna happen. Usually it's just speculation put out as if it's factual, and people just lap it up because they're really keen to know what's going on. And if you've been checking a lot of YouTubers for console news, you might have actually heard some of this as well. So you might be thinking, well, is Vedui's information going to be just speculation and fake news? It will be, right? Not so fast. If you have been following me, you know that I always back up my information with sources from the Fun Pimps. I give it to you from the horse's mouth and let you decide whether the Fun Pimps themselves are trustworthy or not just relying on me to make unsubstantiated claims. But if Microsoft says so, it must be true. Well, you might think so, and you might be, well, watch on and you'll find out. If you do enjoy my videos, why not hit that like button and ring that notification bell? Subscribe as well. That really does help me out, and it's free. If you want to support more, I do have some cool Vedui 42 Brenn merch available. Check right below the video or in the store section of my channel. All purchases help support the content, and of course you'll look awesome as well. But let's start from the top. We're going to be hearing what Rick says, who is of course founder and owner of the Fun Pimps himself.
So we want to go into gold next year. We're going to do our best, but we have a vision for this game. If it's not good enough to meet that vision, then we're going to keep going. That's what we'll do. That's what we've always done. On top of that, we're in negotiations with several companies on being our console porting partner. So rest assured, it's coming back to console. It's we want to do that. We're committed to that, and it's going to happen. You know, it may not happen when you want it to, but it will happen. So we wanted to at least let you guys know that we're thinking about you and we're moving in the business direction to make that happen.
As you heard from Rick, they want to go gold, and they want to get the console port out, and they were working on signing up a partner. Keep in mind, this information came out last year by September, so my speculation is that by now they've already gotten a partner signed up. They have definitely started working on console pieces, which I will be discussing in a bit. But beyond this, Rick went even further. Let's listen some more.
We're going to target the new consoles. We're going to try to make it backport to the old consoles. We have a lot of video options. We think we can make it work on the old consoles too. But and we do. Our dream is to have it cross-play between multiple stores. You know, it would be PlayStation, Xbox, other stores too, possibly the Epic Store or Microsoft Store, all cross-played with dedicated servers. So when it does come back to console, we want that console guys to have a dedicated server experience as well, which is persistent server, so you can play long games for a couple of months like the PC guys do. So you guys are asking about console. We're talking to several companies as porting partners, and we're evaluating how easy it will be to bring the current version of the game to console. So it's going to happen. We're not saying it won't happen. We are saying it will happen. But it's easier to do when the game is in a content locked, finished state versus when it's in flux.
Here, Rick is very clear. They definitely want to port it. They also want to make it cross-play across the different stores, console, PCs, different game stores such as Epic and Microsoft, and it's much easier to get this done once the game is completed, at least feature-wise, as opposed to porting, say, Alpha 20, then you port Alpha 21, and then you port Alpha 22, which is a huge endeavor. So far, so good. But where are we now? Let's talk a little bit about the history so people can understand the whole story. And again, I want to bring this back to what the Fun Pimps have said themselves. So let's look at 7daystoday.com under console news. It's one of their blog posts from let's see, it was from 2019, so it's fairly old, but it gives some of the information about a lot of the problems they were having because they had a long and tedious legal process, but they have reacquired the full console publishing rights. And they also mentioned that no, there's a lot of people in the console community who play. They mentioned something about 10,000 concurrent users at least on the weekends, which is actually very, very high. I didn't know that there were that many. And of course, also that, they're on Alpha 15 only, and there hasn't been an update really since 2017. Wow, that's 5 years ago. And they also go through that they are a PC game developer and publisher. And this is really important because they don't have the resource or expertise to port it to console. In the past, it used to be Telltale who published it, but they were using Iron Galaxy to actually port it. And then they mentioned about there was Telltale that went bankrupt, and that caused a lot of the problems. But making a console port is expensive. It's very, very intensive because you need to have a lot of resources who can actually do the work. And they mentioned that it's literally in the millions of dollars. And there's a lot of restrictions as well. You need to, for instance, not break the save games. And that's a problem with every single alpha that actually breaks the save games, as you know, if you're playing on PC. And there's a lot of testing and submission process to actually get this into the console stores. Another key point here is that they talked about getting, or they were exploring putting out a console version after PC version has gone gold and could end up being entirely new product or on the next console. And that's something that looks to be what's happening. But that was, 3 years ago. But let's look at some of the newer information that we have on the 7 Days to Die forums. At the top part here, they just go through some of the history that we just discussed. Again, it's referencing the blog post. They also mentioned that they definitely wanted, again, to have a console port, and they're committed to that, and that's the reason they purchased the console rights. So that's really good news. Let's go further down. In August 2021, which was about a year ago, there was some fake news coming out as well, and you might have seen some with where people at least came to me and said, hey, they're going to re-release the console port. There's going to be a new version on the console. Actually, what it ended up being was simply reprinting whatever version they had on console because research showed that there was still a demand for it. Now, I personally think that this was maybe a very peculiar way of doing it because, as we all know, the console version, as they said themselves, was an Alpha 15 version, and it hasn't been updated since 2017. And re-releasing this in the current format I think that even though it actually earned them money, did a disservice to the players because it's a version that hasn't been updated and was not going to get updated, and that's not a good way of bringing people into the 7 Days to Die game because people just get frustrated. Still, in September 2021, and this is what we just listened to Rick, they mentioned they were talking about porting the full game to PS5 and Xbox Series, and they hope to be able to backport the full game to PS4 and Xbox One as well. And of course, they mentioned about dedicated service and everything. And this is what they said back in September 2021 when they were talking about the Alpha 20 PC version. And this brings us to where we are, sort of a few months ago. When Alpha 20 was released, one of the parts was that they released it with coding for cross-platform play added in anticipation of future console edition. PC players might have known, especially if you were running a server, that they were switching over from using Steam ID for their player profiles to using EOS numbering as part of saving your profile on the server. So this is EOS is an Epic Store module in order to help with crossplay. In April 2022, and this is for Alpha 20.4, file pathways have been consolidated in 20.4 to comply with Microsoft Store requirement. This is where they were bringing out the mod folder, they're bringing out the log folders, etc., away from the actual game binary folder. So they would basically put that in the app data, at least on the PC, to separate it from the game. And this is something they highlighted. It's really needed for the Microsoft Store, because otherwise you have the game data in the same folder as any save data, which is not really good because that's user data that they're actually playing, and that has to be kept separate. And this is actually a good thing to have them do, because it means that with this being part of what's going into 20.4, they are one step closer to making it compatible with Microsoft Store. And this will be for both console and the PC. And this brings us to the announcement from Microsoft about coming soon. They mentioned that it's coming soon, and I don't think that's correct at all, because as they mentioned, the Fun Pimps fully intends to have cross-platform play between PC and console versions, meaning that those versions will be the same. We're talking about Xbox and PlayStation. But the timeline for all that happening is unknown still. It's not an announcement that the original console version will be re-released through Game Pass with updated content. So what does this mean? Well, again, it means that they are looking at getting parity from the console and the PC version. And this was posted just Wednesday, meaning it's just in April. So this is really, really new. They are reconfirming that they are intending to have cross-platform between PC and console, which means that console needs to have an updated. But there is no timeline. I do think that Game Pass, Microsoft should not have put that here, because it just gives, it's both fake news and not entirely fake news, because even though that will be coming, it's definitely not coming soon. I don't think it's going to be coming under 2022, because the Fun Pimps are still working on Alpha 21, and I don't think it's going to be feature locked by end of 2022, even though they talked about doing a gold release at the end of 2022. I don't think that's going to happen, but at least it means that they are still committed to doing that console port. It's going to be the same version as the PC, but it's definitely not going to be anytime soon, even though that's what Microsoft says. This is what the Fun Pimps have been saying. So let's go a little bit to the speculation. And again, this is pure speculation, again, based on what they have been saying and the general thoughts I have around the development. Now, even though they said that they hope to have a final gold version by 2022, I don't think that's going to be happening. I think we're talking about 2023 or possibly even further beyond that. But I do think that they are aiming towards 2023, because that would be about Alpha 22, which is a possibility, would give them about a year and a half to get bandits and all that in, some more story pieces, and just hiding things up in order to be able to port it over to console as well. I also would imagine that they have already signed up that partner in order to do the console porting. And I'm sure that they are already working on it, not full speed obviously, but working on learning how the code is working, starting to port some of these things over just to understand what's working, what doesn't work, what do they need to change in order to make it work better on console, as well as making further incremental changes to the current version to make it cross-platform and cross-game store. The EOS changes and updates they have been doing, the file location changes, that's all part of that whole journey of getting into it, working with the partners, working with Unity, working with Microsoft and Sony in order to better understand of what changes need to go into the game in order to have a final port that will enable them to have cross-platform between console and PC. But this is something that is very iterative. It requires quite a lot of effort from multiple parties, and as they mentioned initially, it's something that costs millions of dollars. So it's not something that they can just knock out in a couple of months. But you can see that they are still committed to providing that console version. So if you hear from anyone saying that console version has been canceled, just bring them back to what the Fun Pimps have said themselves. Now, you might not agree that they are going to be entirely accurate, but at least it shows their ambition of what they're trying to accomplish. Well, maybe something happens in the future and they're unable to actually make everything happen the way they want to, but at least this is what they're really trying and aiming for. So I think that if you are a console player right now, it's not entirely good news because you likely will have to re-buy the game and you probably will have to play it on the Xbox Series or the PS5 in order to actually take advantage of everything. But if you are a future console player, it's probably going to be really good news. I personally can see myself having a server where I can have people coming in from console, from the PlayStation, from Xbox, people playing from the Epic Store or Steam or Microsoft Store, and everyone being able to play together and have a lot of fun killing zombies. Hopefully this sets your mind at ease. But what do you think? Do you think this is good news? Do you think it's bad news? Do you think it's way too slow? Or do you think it's a reasonable approach that they are taking right now? Why not let me know in the comment section below? And thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.
Special thanks to the great patrons supporting the channel. If you would like to join the Vedui community and support these videos, do follow the Patreon link.